There's a character in SpongeBob SquarePants with hollow red eyes, black liquid bleeding down his face, standing motionless in a wall of TV static. He aired on Nickelodeon in 2019. Nickelodeon later censored him from reruns. But here's what most people miss. The supervising director of that episode didn't apologize. He didn't claim it was an accident. He said, "It's actually kind of fun that it got censored." That's not an accident. That's a writer who knew exactly what he put in a children's cartoon, watched Nickelodeon flinch, and smiled about it. This is a story about a show that ran on two frequencies. One for kids, one for everyone else. And sometimes, those frequencies crossed. And when they did, you felt something you couldn't name. Let's go through it, moment by moment. And this time, only what's confirmed. Let's start with the most documented case on record. The Nosferatu flicker. Season 2, episode called Graveyard Shift, aired September 6th, 2002. SpongeBob and Squidward are forced to work the night shift. SpongeBob invents a scary story about a killer called the Hash-Slinging Slasher to frighten SpongeBob. 3 warning signs he makes up: the phone calls, the bus, the lights, start actually happening. The tension builds for real, and then the episode ends with a reveal. The lights were flickered by Count Orlok, the vampire from the 1922 silent horror film Nosferatu, who is inexplicably standing in the Krusty Krab, casually playing with a light switch. Kids thought it was random, and it wasn't. In 2022, writer and storyboard director Jay Lender told Polygon that Graveyard Shift wasn't always supposed to end with Nosferatu. The original plan featured a different character entirely, a new invention called Floorboard Harry, who lived under the Krusty Krab and would have been responsible for the flickering lights. Lender confirmed in a DVD feature that they ultimately chose Nosferatu over Floorboard Harry for one reason. We found out that Nosferatu was funnier. This was a deliberate creative substitution. Someone in that writer's room actively chose to put a 1922 horror film vampire designed to terrify audiences into a children's cartoon over a purpose-built alternative character. And it went all the way to the top. Series creator Stephen Hillenburg personally accepted Lender's proposal, with Lender noting that Hillenburg gave the staff the opportunity to take creative swings like this. Lender also told Polygon that the Nosferatu gag was probably the first encounter most of the show's young viewers ever had with the 1922 silent film. That's not a throwaway joke. That's a writer who understood he was introducing an entire generation of children to horror cinema through a cartoon and chose to do it anyway. And the horror elements in Graveyard Shift went beyond just the Nosferatu reveal. The episode was deliberately built with atmospheric horror techniques. Flickering lights, shadowy approaching silhouettes, an eerie distorted voice on a phone call with no one on the other end, all designed to contrast sharply with the show's usual vibrant underwater visuals, using desaturated colors and stark lighting to build genuine dread. This was a horror episode on Nickelodeon, rated TV-Y7, and that was just season 2. Up next is a season 2 episode called Wormy, the infamous butterfly scene. SpongeBob and Patrick are babysitting Sandy's pets while she's away. Their favorite is a caterpillar named Wormy. They spend the whole day with him, give him a best friend ribbon, and promise to come back the next morning. Overnight, Wormy transforms into a butterfly. SpongeBob and Patrick don't recognize him and conclude the butterfly must have eaten their friend. Panic spreads across Bikini Bottom. A cartoon town is evacuated over a butterfly. It sounds ridiculous, and then the shot happens. The show cuts to a live-action extreme close-up of an insect face, massive compound eyes, a buzzing, clicking mouth. It fills the screen completely, and it is genuinely, viscerally wrong. Here's the details that make it worse. The close-up isn't even of a butterfly. When Wormy's face appears in close-up, the production used stock footage of a horsefly, something that emits a buzzing sound real-life butterflies don't make. So the show established a cartoon butterfly, and they cut to the face of a completely different insect, more threatening, more alien looking, and presented it as what the characters were seeing. The live-action insect footage was licensed from UK-based natural history studio Oxford Scientific Films. It was pre-existing stock footage. The choice was inserting it into a children's cartoon 3 times, letting it sit on screen just long enough to land somewhere uncomfortable before cutting away. The episode was banned in some countries specifically because the close-up was scaring younger viewers. This is the moment millions of adults still remember. and it follows exactly the same logic as the Nosferatu cameo in Graveyard Shift. Real-world visual material dropped without warning into a cartoon world, designed to trigger a physical reaction before the brain catches up. Next comes The Face Freeze, Season 8, 2012. The premise sounds harmless. SpongeBob and Patrick make silly faces. Mr. Krabs warns them to stop or their faces will freeze that way. They ignore him, their faces freeze. But nothing about what actually appears on screen is harmless. The disturbing faces and face freeze were designed by animator Robert Corey. This guy was a SpongeBob character designer whose personal goal since childhood had been to work on the Ren and Stimpy show. And he eventually did, describing it as one of his favorite projects. That background matters, because what Corey brought to SpongeBob wasn't just cartoon silliness. It was the full gross-out visual horror language of Ren and Stimpy transplanted directly into a children's show. The episode contains 29 total disfigured faces across SpongeBob and Patrick, 14 from SpongeBob, 12 from Patrick. These aren't exaggerated cartoon expressions. They're faces with eyes displaced to wrong positions, mouths that don't fit faces, skin that sags and droops to the chin. The episode doesn't cut away from them quickly. It lingers. It rotates through them. It makes you sit with them. By the end, every main character, SpongeBob, Patrick, Mr. Krabs, Squidward, has their face frozen in a disfigured state. The episode simply ends there with no resolution. No one gets better. The screen just cuts to black.
Stop laughing!
That ending isn't a cliffhanger. It's not a joke. It's 4 characters locked permanently in expressions of physical horror, staring at the audience. And then the credits roll. Ren and Stimpy built its legacy on exactly this technique, using grotesque close-ups to create visceral discomfort inside a cartoon. SpongeBob's crew knew that legacy intimately. Face Freeze wasn't an accident or a lazy episode. It was a deliberate exercise in how far that aesthetic could go on a Nickelodeon broadcast. The answer, as it turned out, was further than anyone expected. But what the writing team did with Are You Happy Now goes somewhere none of us should be comfortable with. For most of SpongeBob's run, Squidward is played as a punchline. Bitter, failed, miserable. The joke. But in Season 8, the show stopped playing it as a joke. The Are You Happy Now episode starts simply. SpongeBob asks Squidward about his happiest memory. Squidward realizes he doesn't have one. SpongeBob tries to fix it. A concert, a museum, a party. Nothing works. And then Squidward stops leaving his house. He grows heavy bags under his eyes. He becomes catatonic. He stays indoors for 2 weeks. The animators depicted him with a disheveled appearance that looked far too much like real-world depression for many viewers as comfort. Then comes the scenes nobody talks about out loud, but everyone remembers. Squidward sticks his head in the oven, but he's just taking out brownies.
Just can't seem to get happy. Well, that didn't help. But,
He throws a rope with a loop over the ceiling, but he's just hoisting up a bird cage.
I can't seem to get happy. Maybe this will help.
Bait and switch suicide jokes on a Nickelodeon children's cartoon rated TV-Y7. The show frames both as punchlines, but the visual setup, head in oven, rope with a noose loop, is unmistakable to any adult watching. The episode pushed Squidward into as far a level of suicidal depression as a cartoon with this rating is legally allowed to show. It was storyboarded by Luke Brookshire and Mark Cesarelli, with Stephen Hillenburg credited as series creator. No writer has publicly explained the suicide visual choices on record, but the connection to internet culture isn't clean either. There's a documented rumor that the episode was written as a deliberate nod to the famous creepypasta Squidward's Suicide. Writer Cassie Alexander has confirmed he knows about the creepypasta, making the parallel at minimum a distinct possibility. And Nickelodeon eventually acted. While the episode was never officially banned, it has been quietly pulled from reruns since August 2019, almost certainly due to the 2 suicide jokes. The episode ends with Squidward finding happiness by destroying hundreds of papier-mâché SpongeBob's in a manic rage. That's the resolution. That's the happy ending. A children's cartoon, depression imagery, suicide visual gags, and the finale built on cathartic destruction. None of it was accidental. Every one of those moments left a mark. Now you know exactly who put it there. If this changed how you see SpongeBob, drop a comment. Tell me which moment stuck with you and you never understood why. And if you want to know which other children's shows hid things in plain sight, subscribe.